This is about Frans of Assisi, not his life story as such. It's been told many places and by people more knowledgeable than me about it, but free associations in his story reflecting on our life today and the actuality of the way he has lived and the things that he had discovered in himself, the way he lived. It's not a religious talk, it's a talk about the human spirit and the human understanding of itself and the way of life that it is leading. We need it, in my opinion, really much. That's why many people go as tourists and pilgrims to visit Assisi, that place in Italy where he had lived and was born. That's where his name comes from, Frans of Assisi. He was born in 1182 and had a youth that was filled with a lot of luxury. He was son of a tradesman, and so by being that, he had enough between his hand that he could use to the right and to the left, and so he did. He was living in lavish, used a lot of money on clothing and sometimes parties and good food for himself and his friends. Even his parents didn't like that because they were also from an environment that understood that money should be used with temperance and not just because you have it that you can use it all. It's also about how you use it. And they were very afraid that things will go very bad for him, but actually he got these realizations in his life that's really interesting for me. I must say that I'm a Muslim from a Muslim background and very occupied by spiritual matters. So I know Francis of Assisi also from his contact with the Muslim world, and um, there are many centers in the Muslim world as well, especially in my country, in Lebanon, in my home country. There is a beautiful monastery, Franciscan monastery, that has been there for uh, 800 years or so. So it's an old story. Well, I had to put him back up again. Maybe he didn't like me talking about him, or maybe he was just happy that I did. So, where to start, where to begin? I'm just giving some free associations out of his life and life story in the way he found God. Of course, he found it through his Christian faith and through the belief in Jesus, the Messiah, the Christ. What interests me is how he tried to live in the footsteps of this very special and powerful Savior, Jesus Christ, because that's what interests me a lot. How can you do that and live it truly when we are in a world? Well, is this just over? You can ask yourself, and cannot repeat itself. Is it just a one-time man? Is it maybe all exaggerations, just made up so people can have something to look back at and see some clarifying ideas in? Whatever it is, I believe that from generation to generation, we humans have the possibility and ability to live a spiritual life and to understand some of the depth in it. One of the things Franz of Assisi has been saying that's very beautiful in his life. He said to his the people who followed him, "Be thankful for everything, and be always cheerful, and no matter what conditions you're under, be always in a kind of thankfulness to God, because this is God's will with you." And so he used to repeat that from from in his life as well. And that's what's the special idea here, how he develops to become this person who is seeking more than himself, seeking God and the spiritual life to achieve that height that's hidden as treasures inside these kind of lives. Trouble is, many people do not believe because they haven't experienced this or tried it. Other people want to believe but can't. And then, yet, other people have all the faith and the talk about it but do not follow it. And so we see a lot of people misusing the faith, even maybe his name and his way to personal gains that will destroy the belief in other people when they see when things comes to the surface, and they eventually almost always do. So what's special about him is his transparency, in my idea. When I've read a biography about him, I could see that what's very special about Francis of Assisi is transparency. He lived as everyone should live, um, the same person wherever he is, and however he woke up or died, he was the same person. And he had in his youth this kind of pleasures that he indulged in, but he also became aware from time to time about his duties when some of the poor people came to the doors of where he was raised, and somebody asked him in the name of God or in the for the love of God to give some alms, to give some help. And once he refused a man, it was said in his life story, and he was very, very hurt about it afterwards. So after he rejected him, he ran after him just immediately and gave him something and promised himself he would always give for God's sake when anybody asks him in for the love of God. It's very touching for any spiritual person like me to hear these things, because that means you're putting your faith in God's hands and in the love of God more than in the money you have between your hands. You're really giving up that idea that you owe anything and you possess anything that's not given to you by God's will and grace. And this is not easy for human beings, just logically. We are bound to believe, and many people see it, that is the truth. This is the reality around us, surrounding us all the time, that what you have is what you are, and this is what you gain. You do not give it away. I have some friends, I know some people who are not my friends, but some of those who are my friends have a lot of money, millions and millions. And when you hear them talk sometimes, they go and speak in a manner that they seem so poor inside themselves. They will not give alms, they will not give to charity, they don't like it. And they go always to buy the cheapest of the cheapest, even though they can live in lavishness. I know others who are living in lavishness and using all their money on themselves in many ways to expand their egos and pleasures and the way of life that all of us can dream of at one point or another in our in our life. And so some are living it, but I know also some who talks about it's not so fulfilling as they think it is, because once they've got it and went away with it, okay, then what? It repeats itself, and it becomes the Gatsby situation where you're just throwing parties, but you have a certain goal behind it that's not money, but something that is based on love, the love for somebody you never got to or never reached to. And so we are in this situation. When I look at Francis of Assisi's life, and in his youth he was the son of a tradesman, so they had money between in their life. He was slowly becoming aware of the sufferings of others, and understanding that if he had to understand God's spirit in him to make it awake, he had to live that life. It's not enough just to talk about it or use things on yourself or give a little bit charity, but but it's living it. That's the thing that matters. It is where your spirit will develop and evolve and change, and this can happen for both a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a Hindu, a Buddhist, because I have seen it happen in other people than Christians. So even though I'm fond of Francis of Assisi, and even though I am from another tradition, I would like to say that this experience that he's going through is possible for people across the religions. And that is what's important to understand, that I can tap in and see in his life a way of like getting inspired to walk the same steps, or at least be humble in what I've got, and understand that to be thankful and awaken my inner spiritual life when I understand that there have been people like him, and in the Muslim world almost simultaneously there had been living some big spiritual guided people um, who also influenced others in their time. And there has also been some Jewish mystics and spiritual people living at the exact same time, 11 to 1200. who gave a lot of spirituality away and lived it truly. And so it's not a singular case, but it's something we can try to achieve partly or wholly in our life. But what I understand from what he's doing is that you have to awaken your soul by realizing that you have to be there for others with what you've got. And how can you tell that to people who are just living for themselves? This is the big thing. And how can you also tell that to people who are talking about this but not living it themselves? So where has this awareness gone in many humans, and why can they find it? What's the problem of tapping into that? Maybe they need a pilgrimage or a walk with some people in the same footsteps to visit Assisi and visit the places, or maybe go to the places where these mystics have been living before, or the people who are seeking spirituality are, because then that can give you that awakeness. Sometimes it happens suddenly. Another thing that happens with Frans of Assisi was well, um, there was in his society a concrete conflict in the life of people, and that conflict was actually a kind of war between the city of Assisi and Perugia, and Assisi. These two towns were in a kind of conflict with a lot of tensions between them. There was the Pope, and there was the overclass, and so the middle class as well, and then the poor people beneath it. And they were all, in a way, engaged in that kind of civil war between the classes and between these families that were ruling one place and another, and wanting to take over or change things as they were. So they were rivals. It's like reading Romeo and Juliet, the story that we know from Shakespeare about these two towns that were in rivalry. And so the same can be said here. He has experienced this. In 1202, there was actually declaration of war between Assisi and Perugia, and a very bloody battle, they say, happened between these two, the people of these two towns. Assisi was lost, and France was actually captured and put in prison in Perugia, where he were for almost a year. They say he was treated well, and he also spent time with the knights and the higher class of people, and he kept his light and cheerful mind. But that thing made an impact on him, that story of the conflict. And later, when he came home, he came very, very sick and felt that he was gonna die. So at the same time as this illness hit him, he got an existential crisis with himself that changed him completely. So he started like looking deeper into himself and looking through that illness into his spirit, like a mirror in a way. And so he started going out, enjoying the view around him in the nature and what's about it. And he could feel that he was shaken from the inside many times. Feelings of sadness, loneliness, a life that really just was leaving him and was passing by, had no meaning for him anymore. He felt he was really gonna die, and at the same time was hit by this existential crisis and a kind of what we can call depression today. And so afterwards, he was very sick and ill from himself as well as he was ill in his body. And when he started recovering from that, he had these wake up calls inside him. And so he wanted to go away and become a knight. So he met with a knight who gladly wanted to take him along, but had not a lot of money. So Franz helped him get ready and paid a lot for, horse and equipment and whatever for that travel. And at night he saw a dream, they say. And I believe in dreams as a person myself. I believe they can have valuable information and symbols for us. Not every dream, but some dreams. From my culture, we separate dreams in three parts. And I know in the Christian world, many people have abandoned that idea of believing in dreams or looking into the meaning of them, because they can be signals from what they call the subconscious of you, or the heavens, if you believe in God. But if you don't, at least you can understand it's some kind of message to you from your subconscious that's telling you something that's going to happen. In my opinion, it's something beyond the subconscious. It's a kind of contact between us and the future. So the dreams is a kind of a warning, or bearing a glad tidings for us in whatever way. And we see here Francis of Assisi having these dreams, and he's having them the night before he goes. He sees a man that's been taken into a big castle, and it was full of very beautiful things and weapons, and a lot of beautiful furniture, and he was very happy about that. He asked who owns all this and who owns this castle, this beautiful place, and he was given an answer in the dream that everything in the castle and the castle himself was his, and he was very happy. He wasn't really looking beyond the idea of that dream yet. He wasn't really experienced in interpreting the spiritual messages, and this is what's interesting for me, is how do you become good at interpreting spiritual messages from inside you and outside you, and from the dreams themselves. It needs a kind of spiritual transparency, awakening, and a kind of attention that you need to have with you in order to receive these messages and understand them. And so he says that from the stories told about him in the biographies. Well, he later on his trip saw another dream that a voice was talking to him, like it's God's voice. He thought he's been asked, well, who would do more for you, a master or a servant, a rich or a poor? And Franz was answering in the dream, well, it's the master and the rich that certainly will be doing more. And so he was asked, why do you then leave the Lord to go with the servant? And why do you leave the rich God for a poor humans? And then he's like in the dream, like realizing something. He's still in his dream, realizing, what do you want, Lord? What is it you want me to do? And he gets the answer, go back to your place or your country. And so he receives these messages as kind of something he has to do in his life, that he's pointed to, and he has to pay attention to that. And he goes back, leaving these adventures that was awaiting him as a knight and a traveler. And one can say, is these dreams really true, or is it something that maybe the stories had making them up later? And if they are true, why should he listen to them? Because there is a lot of gains to get by traveling and being a knight on the roads, meeting people and cultures. It's very enriching, as we know, especially in that time where travel was something that was very hard and difficult, and had needed a lot of planning, and it could be very dangerous as well. But it's like he was called into something. So when he went back, he couldn't really rest. And so he started like understanding what's the call for him there, that he had to really change his life in many ways. And the legend tells that he heard more voices talking to him while he was alone, that he has to really hate and leave everything what he had been loving so far, and everything that he wants and wanted to get. He should despise that and leave it, and go for all the things that he finds hard and does not like really. And these words, or these understandings that maybe comes in a dialogue between himself and his own mind, and the spiritual awakening that he's going through, we all have that. And I remember many times where I have had these talks with myself and suddenly get this clarification. Maybe I've had talks with my friends, or be sitting alone for a long time, struggling with a problem I have in my life, and then I could see that I had these kind of clarifications by not speaking directly to myself, but it's like there's something happening inside my mind and inside my chest that really suddenly gives me this information I need and the understanding I was missing. So I can relate to that, and I think many people would be able to relate to that if they open their mind and hearts, that it's not impossible. You can actually listen to messages from the future inside yourself, and you can talk to yourself and get clarification like you're talking to a friend, because you have yourself with you at all times. You have to relate to it, and it has to understand also that you are the leader of that, what's inside you and all the actions that's going on in that communication. And when Franz seems to be getting this message, he got inspired by understanding these things with him, and so he turns to uh, follow in the footsteps of Christ and to overcome himself. This idea of overcoming yourself is a basis for any spiritual journey, not only in religion, but also for any human who want to seek religion and seek deep mystical clarification. It's about overcoming yourself. One of the things you learn if you go to a monastery or go at night praying with some people who would like and sit and meditate or something, it's about overcoming your sleep and the need for rest. So you always push yourself to the limit. Slowly, slowly, gradually, you will go deeper and deeper into doing the things you hate or you feel is tiresome, like waking up at night and praying or sitting meditating or singing chants. If depends on the religion you're following. So it's about overcoming yourself. This is a very central word. How to get over all the sweetness and the lust and the things you really like. And if you have it in front of you, it's very hard to leave it. At the same time, go and do the opposite of it is even harder. And so one day he was traveling, and outside his town of Assisi, in that valley, he meets a person who is very ill, and he gets disgusted by that. And when he got disgusted, he talked to himself, saying, "Well, this is what I need to overcome. Everything that disgusts me, I have to overcome." And so he went to that very ill person and helped him, talked to him, and trying to overcome the things that he hated or didn't really like. And so from there, it started living in him, feeling that this person is suffering. There is a human being in that sick body that is suffering at the moment he is walking by, and he need to have compassion with that human being and understand that the grace of God was given to him, but he's not better than this person that has been suffering there. And so he overcomes himself by really wiping out all this ego, what can you say, ego, uh, ego-filled um, disgust and distancing that he has in himself because of finding this person in trouble, finding him ill on the street. He has to get over himself in order to find the Spirit of God in him. And so it's like he found the key in all this, going on that road, listening to that vision before that, and seeing the dream before it. At the same time, as he wrote later in before his death in 1226, he said that I was given to go in between these ill people, the leopards and other people who really disgusted me in the beginning, and I was changed by that. And when I went away from them, that bitterness and that disgust was changed to kind of sweetness in the soul and in my body. And so I stopped up and had left the world in many places, left the world in those places. It's like he wasn't there. He was living that sweetness of giving himself up to being among these poor and sick people. And at the same time, he got a feeling of being sad and really looking back at himself, how he was thinking about himself and others before that experience came to him. And that's in itself really a great height to reach in life as a spiritual seeker, to be able to see that the way you've been looking at people and life the way you've been distancing yourself from some of them is in many ways something saddening, tiresome, and you should relieve yourself from, and in that way overcome yourself and who you are. And so he got to understand that he has to change from within. And the change really happened, the transformation happened by going through these things that he didn't like, by leaving everything he liked and going through this. And this becomes the key for him, as we will see in his biography. Well, the inspiration I get from this is like he found the key to his spiritual awakening and development and salvation in the end. And so he remembered also, as mentioned, that the words of Christ is to deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. So everybody has a kind of self they have to deny and not let live too deep um, with its pleasures alone. You have also to go against it, control it, and try to go beyond it. This is what I get inspiration of here, and I know it from my background, and many Muslims would understand that too, who've been on these spiritual journeys or trying it at least, that there is also a struggle in the Muslim literature to deny yourself, overcome it, control it, and put it on the right track so it can give way to understanding God's message and relating to life in that light of what the Spirit is telling you, and not only what the body and your inner self wants from this materialistic world. And the same goes for a lot of the Jewish practitioners, people who are really trying to be humble, getting themselves to realize God's words in them and let God's light shine in them. Same you can say about the spiritual people in Hinduistic and Buddhistic traditions, where they have to overcome a lot and empty themselves from all these greed and hatred, any kind of envy and dirtiness that can come into the spirit and the soul, and thereby become in one with life in a different way. This is a deep transformation he's really undergoing here, and we others can only try it, or maybe try over several times, and I think many times we fail. It's like there is a paradise on the other side of that travel and that journey, and this is why he became so special for many people in the Christian world, but also in his contact with the Muslim world. He left his marks as well. But I know also that several people from other places in the world have had this inspiration by also coming to the place of Frans of Assisi. So it's like he had put on himself that humble, poor, sensitive interaction with the world, and that's maybe the gate to the spiritual awakening and sensitivity of the spirit, to change yourself and to get out of these usual clothings that you had. The beautiful thing about him is that he had all this. He's not from a very poor background, so you can say, well, he didn't know anything else, but he has been from a well-to-do family and had enough between his hands. But then, well, that journey started, as we were saying. And so it can happen to everyone. It doesn't mean that poor people cannot experience it. Maybe they are more happy in ways we do not understand or realize, and people with all their riches and access do not realize. I do not know that, because sometimes I look at the world and cannot see through it. But it seems there are gates that are really hidden for many people unless they seek them. So you have to go out and seek, finding these beautiful hidden treasures that will give you all this pleasant, deep feeling of being who you are in a very deep way. One other inspiration in his story is the suffering, how he grasps the idea of the suffering as a way not only to salvation, but to really evolve into that spiritual being you really want to go. And and I understand, from a Christian point of view, that he is looking to Christ because this is the ultimate picture for him as a sacrificer a kind of a lot of suffering that's going on in the life of Christ, and the ending of it that shows him very clearly which way to go. But the key of seeing suffering as a way of getting out of that shallow life that you can be living is something that is mystical and difficult to explain at the same time. Because what should we do? How should we throw ourselves into suffering? Is that what it's meaning of it? Or should we go and make ourselves and others suffer in order to clarify their spirit? I think some people have been trying that, also some orders, different monasteries and philosophies, and people who really think that you have to suffer in order to understand the spiritual ways. And so they go and make themselves suffer, or maybe put themselves in a situation where they feel the pain, like hitting themselves or injuring themselves or going through fire or whatever. And we know that, like, sometimes when we get the pain, something awakens inside us that has been dwelling. And when we get ill and feel that we are suffering, or we have a troublesome time and suffering through it, there is something that awakens inside us. A new voice comes up from the inside and from the head. And also the world becomes different in many people's eyes when they go through a suffering. We are not the same before and after that suffering. Something really changes. And if we are finished with that suffering, sometimes we forget and go back to our old ways, seemingly as if nothing has happened. But for some people, that change is permanent. It's so deep that you can never really forget it again. You have really felt how it was. It's like a person standing in the night in dark streets, not having a place to go. That feeling in itself of being scared, alone, not knowing what's going to happen, not having a shelter or any love or any care around you. Well, what's going to happen to you? And you never forget this evening, or somebody who have been in a place where they couldn't get out, or they lost their purse or got sick and then got their health back again. These are impressions that are so deep and stays inside you and inside your body and mind and heart, that they cannot be changed immediately. So there is something about suffering as a gateway to awakening. I know also from other traditions, like psychological ideas, that torment and sadism is a kind of ways to awaken that as well. Some people, they go and try to find in the sadomasochism in a sexual way, as a like as a gate to awaken their their pleasures, and awaken that part of them that has been dwelling senseless. But this is a different way altogether. This is an awakening of a spirit that comes because of the suffering that hits you, or you are exposed to in part of your life. But it leaves the question, how can you go and seek suffering without tormenting yourself on purpose? Do you have to torment yourself on purpose? And this was a philosophy that also had been in the church and still is many places. It's also part of other religions. I know it also from some of the Muslim ways, that people, and the Jewish as well, people has to do things to keep themselves on the right road. And I know some people, I know it sounds very, very strange, but they go sometimes and put their finger in the fire or something, just to feel how it is to be burned, or a needle or something, just to feel that, okay, I have to stay awake, and I have to remind myself that you cannot go and do whatever you like. You have to stay on the path of spirituality and the good way. And this seems strange in our times, where many people, including myself, we are giving we are giving in to a kind of life that We should avoid every suffering and every torment and every kind of pain, and go and find everything that can shelter us from it, not getting exposed to it. And so when we get exposed to pain or suffering or torment, many times we get shocked, we cannot take it, and we are not ready for it, and we feel we are directly punished by life or not wanted. Whilst the opposite can also be true. I've been through periods in my life where I've really been suffering for different reasons, like so many other people can be suffering as well. And sometimes I was reminded of that when I was reading books or watching a movie, or some friends came by. They could remind me that maybe this suffering is a gate for awakening for you. You're maybe a lucky man, because this suffering and the gates that's closing on you, and the situation you are in, isolation, in the near the ice cap, alone and away from your family and the world, is a way of opening your heart or mind to some other gates that has been closed. You could reach into your own spirituality and your own deeper mind, and getting a lot of pleasure and happiness out of accepting what you have got of suffering. And so this is like Amor Fati that Nietzsche will be talking about later. I know this very strange to be mingling Nietzsche in here, talking about Frans of Assisi, but well, this is my associations here, that you love your fate and you love whatever comes and whatever has been put on your plate. And that's in depth a religious idea, and it's very very clear in the way Frans of Assisi is going about his life, where suffering is changed to a gate to a kind of happiness. You know, the backside of that suffering is a kind of pleasure and happiness in receiving that awakening call and not being left over. I know it also from the Muslim culture, the religious Muslim culture of spirituality, that when illness and poordom and troubles knocks on your door, that means God is not forgetting about you. You wouldn't like to be that person who has been forgotten by God by being giving everything and being left over to yourself and your ego and your way of life that's so shallow and not really giving you any deeper meaning, because it will fade sooner or later and you will be alone with yourself, feeling that emptiness. So being remembered by God is very important here, and the way God can remember you, life, is by making life changing inside you and around you, and that what makes your heart beat, your mind call for an answer, and your inner soul really going through a transformation and a change. And if you can use that to go on the other side, you will get the happiness of that depth, even though you have lost a lot on the way. I do not wish it for anyone. I tell you, sometimes I wish my life was much easier and it had been just that pleasure, life pleasure, of pleasure that many people have been living, at least in traditional ways. But I cannot change it. This is what I got on my plate. And so have many of you, people who would be listening to this, because I am sure many of those other people do not have time and do not want to listen to things like this because they don't need it. They haven't been touched by this kind of scary side of life, to make them awaken and to look into the stories of people like Frans of Assisi, or mystics, or people who are seeking deeper spiritual life. But we do, because we have been through, what can I say, glancing somehow into some hellish depths that many people do not realize are there. Life can be very scary. Things can seem sometimes very strange. You can lose something, or things just go wrong for you, and people look at you in ways you do not understand. You lose things. You never get success with what you are doing. And whilst others, they are just going from one thing to another much easier. Yeah, they are having hard time and they are working for it 10, 12 hours, and sometimes they get failures as well. I'm not saying that it's dance of roses for anyone, but some people just get to realize that life can be scary. It's like walking on a very shallow path, and beneath you is a big hell. You can fall in and fall in very deep in that darkness. And when you get over to the other side, or maybe find a rest during that travel of your life, you will start looking deeper. You just seek some deeper meaning and answer. There is a gate that's just opened inside you. And this is what suffering does to us, in my opinion. It opens these gates. It doesn't open for everyone. And so people who would be listening to this, or reading about it, and in their own way, maybe somewhere else, finding their own way, it's also to get inspiration on how to get over and past to that beautiful happiness that's hidden behind this suffering, and how to put your soul and mind at rest, being calm, sleeping easy, going about your life in a way that's in total acceptance of everything, everything, being thankful for no matter what condition you're in, even the worst ones, keeping the love shining in your heart. And this is what the famous psychologist Viktor Frankl here realized by speaking about the experience in prison, and how many people faltered and were in despair, but also many people kept their hearts alive by making the choice of love in the face of hatred. It's not easy, but this is a depth that I don't know how to reach to, and I'm not sure I want it. But sometimes it happens to you even though you are not wanting it. It's like you're chosen for it, or you're just on that path and you cannot do anything to go back. I have tried many times just to go back to a shallow way of life, or to get accepted in certain circles of people, and trying to just get that very normal life around me. And I'm not able to. And so my suffering continues, and the pain continues as well. And I'm in places where I cannot go back and stay with my family as I want. That was also a source of pain in my life. And sometimes I lost track of um, heavens, praying to God, understanding that relationship is so crucial for your survival, spiritually, mentally, physically, everything, to keep holding on to that rope of the godly spirit that will be following you through the darknesses and shining a light even in your darkest hours. But many times we have to realize that before we do it. And sometimes we get tricked by our own minds and self, saying, well, it's God's fault. He could have done it differently. Why didn't he? That means he doesn't like you, or he doesn't exist, or God is an evil source of what's going on. So we turn against ourselves, and our suffering becomes unbearable and deeper. And that's why, from, like, again, my culture and literature, I have seen that the words of the wise man Ali was very, the wise leader and Prince Ali bin Abi Talib. He was saying that, well, if you carry your suffering with thankfulness, you bear it easier. And if you carry it with a curse, the curse becomes twice-fold, hurting you. And so I think this is also a gate that Frans really found in his life, that he can go and walk in the footsteps of Christ, using the suffering in his life as a gate for thankfulness and receiving the love of God, and not as a curse. He does not see it as a rejection or a way of turning his face away from the godly spirit. It's because it's a way to show you can get out of yourself and indulge in things that seems suffering on the surface, but behind it is hiding a kind of living paradise. And so Frans has this look into the crucifixion, as the, of course, Christian way is centered around, as a way of saying, well, what happened there? And you have Christ on the cross saying, I'm thirsty. And later he sees his mother in front of him. It's painful. And the woman is said, well, there is your son. He is suffering there. And he is between two people who are a thief and cutthroat, or like some people who've been doing criminality. And he does not belong to that, because he hasn't been doing that same thing. But everything is actually painful in that way, both mentally, spiritually, and physically. And this is what becomes Francis' ultimate goal, to live in that, in the shadow of that. And that's why he um, he sees a vision in that crucifixion he was looking at, saying, well, dearest, highest God, enlighten my the dark places in my heart. Give me the right faith and let me hope and become full in love, insight, and realization. Dear Lord, let me carry your holy and true message. He falls into tears, and he feel a lot of relief at the same time. And so again, he steps another deeper step into that mystery, unsolving it, and not unsolving it, but opening with the gate key that he has got, that he has to see this as his way from now on. This is the power of God speaking through his mind in at that time, to look deep into the suffering of Christ. This becomes the key, not only looking at the suffering, not only realizing that he has to like what he hates and to hate what he likes, but he has to focus on the suffering of the Christ as a way to get on and to open these secret passages in his mind and heart. And it's really amazing, because who would like to do that? Tell me. It's easy for many of us people just to talk about the suffering of the prophets and the suffering of the people who are chosen by God, or whatever we talk about. But to go and try to do it yourself and live it yourself takes really a lot from a human being. And even though you find it easy, maybe at some time or in the beginning, it's very hard to continue. And it's very easy to get lost as well, in my opinion, because it takes a lot of the mind and soul and spirit to go through that transformation and to find yourself on the other side of it. And so now I find myself just speaking, asking myself, like you should too, what are you doing besides reading a book about this person or that, and going to a sacred place to pray or meditate, walking in the footsteps of some known persons in history, like it was a trip, wandering through and then going back to our usual lives. What are we really doing to find that way of following in the footsteps of the big ones? This is a big question. I can't see what special I am doing, but I should at least get myself ready to it. If something happens, there is a crisis, or people need me, or somebody comes out in front of me and they are seeking that help, that I at least do not turn away, but have my heart open and ready to accept and to give and to take off my shirt if that's what's needed, and to give away what I should have done. Um, it's not easy, but that's what should have been, and that's what we need to do. And we not always do it, and sometimes in a situation where we are, we forget about it. So when I look at the Frans of Assisi and his story here, I see that at one point he goes to the bishop in his town, and he stands there, takes off his clothes and give it to him and say, I want to follow in the footsteps of Christ. And he could see that he has been carrying some clothes that gives, as we said before, it's a shirt of pain, that what can you say, that pressures that your body, and maybe even make you bleed or something. I do not know, but it's a way of feeling the pain all the time in your body. They used to carry on their feet and thighs and stomach and chest, such kind of clothing beneath the clothing that made you feel that you are really on a way to always feel the pain. It's like the stone in your shoe. Always keep the stone in your shoe, because then you know what it is to walk normal in life, and never for a second forget the big grace that God has given you in this life, that you are healthy and you can walk around without any trouble and without feeling the pain in every second. So some has taken this on themselves. And what are we others doing? And are we ready? Even if the pain comes, how will we react? And we are maybe ready to react, but we can also easily forget. So how to remind ourselves, keep going on these roads and open our hearts for that. At least accept the suffering that we have got in life, being thankful and cheerful, and staying that way, and having our hearts with God before having it with ourselves and our needs, and trusting that whatever we give, it's too little, and it will bring us a lot of joy and happiness back when we give it. I've experienced that in my life, and I will keep these stories secret, of course, because it's my joyful moments. But I know it's true, and I know other people have done the same, doing some real good things, or in secret helping some people, or doing a difference for others, and how it felt afterwards. It's what they say, really fulfilling in many ways. That kind of altruism that's really lost in many of us today, because we are so self-occupied, especially the rich ones, and also the poor, unfortunately. Whenever they get out of their poordom, they forget all the other poor people, and so they only think about themselves and their needs. So there is something that has to be awakened in us and changed, and it needs not only a talk or two, it needs a school. And it's a school that's lost in society, that we and our kids and people around us has to be aware of the pleasures that we have got and the happiness that we have, and to take and receive whatever suffering is or can come with a kind of acceptance, deep acceptance, even though it's painful and we reject it, of course. Our minds and hearts and everything in us reject it. We do not like it, we do not want it. And we would wish we have left the world before it happened. It can be injuries of war, a kind of illness, a losing of a close beloved one. This is not easy just to accept at all. But the gate to overcoming it is through the acceptance and going through that suffering in a different way than you would have done by rejecting it. And so when Franz of Assisi, he gave his clothes to this bishop in his town, um, this bishop felt very touched by it, and he asked a servant to give him his robes. And so he took these robes of this poor servant, an old and tired, what can you say, old and used robe, and he put it on him. And then he drew a cross on it, and so it became the symbol of the Franciscan monks, as we have been seeing afterwards since then. When you meet a Franciscan monk, they have these usually brown capes, with a kind of white cross on it, even if visible or not visible, depends on how much they want to show that side of them. But yeah, well, that's the story of Francis of Assisi, how he developed and became that monk. And the story is long and still ongoing, and I think I'll stop here for today. It's been inspiration enough, and maybe just a kind of wake up call for myself to always be ready and to find God's blessing even in the suffering, and to be cheerful at any time, at all times, and be happy for being awakened and maybe chosen through this suffering, but also to be ready to relieve others of their suffering, because this is the way you find the hidden door to that hidden paradise. I'm very thankful for inspiration to give this talk to myself, first of all. I'm recording it just in case somebody resounds in these ideas and thoughts with me, and hopefully everyone finds his own or her own way to these issues as well.